OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
A very good morning to you. You're welcome along to the OTB AM Crystal Ball. This is the annual show where we make a fool of ourselves for trying to predict how the coming sporting year will play out. We have Ger, Nathan and Adrian with us. Ger, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Nathan, how are you?
Happy Christmas / New Year, everybody.
Absolutely. Got the Christmas trees up. And Adrian in his festive-free studio home. How are you getting on?
Wearing a red jumper on. Yeah, good. I'm delighted to be here. I understood I was presenting it, so this is an interesting turn of events.
Well, by all means, would you like to take over?
Why don't I take the reins on?
Yeah, you go for it. I mean,
seeing as that's what we'd agreed.
I'm happy to just sit back and
wow,
and
Jesus.
Take over.
The ego has landed.
Well, it's more from the point of view that, like, you know, you guys are the supposed experts, and I'll be the one that'll just gently steer things around. So if everybody's comfortable with that,
consider the baton passed.
And primarily on as well because I'd actually looked back on what the ridiculous efforts that we made the last time we sat down, which I believe might have been 2 years ago. I don't think we won last year.
We did.
God knows what happened.
We did.
No, we did.
Okay. Well,
we made the mistake last year of recording it about 6 weeks before the end of the year. I think we all tipped Liverpool to win the league, and by the time it went out, they'd lost about 8 games.
Yeah, well,
so thankfully we're live today.
Thankfully, exactly, that we're leaving it a bit later in the year so we can fully.
And what day is this? When?
A great day.
You lose track, don't you? You just lose track between all the black magic and the wine. It is that time of the year. As always, let's roll with the double intro here. Owen's been pointing out we set aside
you got
our
a script
usual
and everything. Jesus.
practices of making wild predictions, and happily Ger has jumped in to prove this point, pontificating even wilder, unprovable and untraceable hot takes, all in the interest of helping you to think, yeah, I know as much as these paid professionals. Or as Joe Swift, and I mean, you'll have to forgive me because I totally forgot we did one last year, but Joe Swift on YouTube said after the 2020 episode so eloquently, I usually enjoy this programme, but this one was woeful. The Six Nations section of the debate sounded like some blokes chatting in the pub about a subject they don't know very much about. Come on, guys. You're supposed to be analytical, knowledgeable and interesting. Garbage, that, fellas. Garbage. I mean, it did strike me that maybe he thought he was tuned into Game On or something. He's definitely got the wrong crowd there. Finn McCool, nice bit of needle there between Nathan and the other lad, which, let's face it, could have been any one of us. And then collegiality broke out with 100 equipoise who said, great show. Of course, it's all up in the air, but glad to see the 4 colleagues enjoying their guesswork. A super show throughout the year. All the best to you for 2020. And look what a shit show that ended up. So that's pretty much what we're about here over the next, I believe we're going to do it in sort of 30 minutes. It might end up in about 45 or 50 minutes. And we've a whole bunch of categories that we're going to get into. I'm not going to give you the menu. It's all the very obvious stuff. We're going to kick off with the Premier League champions prediction for the season. We have a good steer on exactly how things are going. It's a 3-horse race. Over to our Premier League commentator. Nathan, who are you going for?
I'm going to go for Manchester City. I am as much on the fence about this as I possibly can because there is the unknown of the African Cup of Nations and the loss of Salah and Mane. I think if that were to not go ahead and Salah and Mane were to stay at Liverpool would win the league. I think Liverpool at their best are the best of these 3 teams, but I think that's a loss that Liverpool will struggle to bear, and we are in this relentless title race again, and I think Manchester City just have that bit of depth that will see them through in the majority of games. I don't think this is a great Manchester City team by any stretch. I think the loss of Aguero over the last couple of seasons has seen them taking a major step back in terms of their quality, but they've shown all season long they have a way of just grinding out these dull 2-3-0 victories, and I think that might see them through, certainly ahead of Liverpool and ahead of Chelsea, who I think in that final third just can't seem to make up their mind, and maybe will never make up their mind as to what their best front 3 is. And I just think they may fade away as well. So City, but if the African Cup of Nations were somehow not to go ahead, I'm with Liverpool.
Wow. It's a victory for anti-football is what I'm hearing there. Ger, what's your view?
Would you call Man City anti-football? I think Man City are playing some beautiful stuff at the moment.
That's what Nathan's running with.
I'm not saying it's anti-football. I think compared to the Manchester City of 3-4 years ago, where Aguero was the focal point. I think he was the stardust on that Manchester City team. Meant there was always a purpose to everything they did. Whereas I think you watch City now, it is no risk, incredibly high quality football, but it's no risk football, which doesn't make it particularly exciting. So I think, yes, it's top quality. The speed they play at is exceptional. You can't say it's anti-football, but I just don't think it's not something that's particularly scintillating to watch, is it?
I think they've been involved in the best game of football so far this season, right? The 2-2 with Liverpool. They deserve a huge amount of credit for that.
Yeah, what's your point?
That they were one half of the greatest half of the
quality of the goals
that they're
scoring.
Greatest game of the season so far.
Also amazing.
That's half a game of football. I'm on about
Bernardo
week in, week
Silva's
out.
goal came against Villa week in, week out. There was a period there where there's like 3 or 4 games in a row where they were scoring absolutely amazing stuff. If Gabriel Jesus stops hitting the post and hitting the crossbar, then I think they're going to start blowing teams away, and they'll be like, "Oh, this is so boring." They're winning all the game 4-0 by scoring great goals. And Ederson's goalkeeping is absolutely off the charts. I think that I think what you're doing here as a Liverpool fan is you're trying to reverse jinx Manchester City, and it's not going to work. We see through you, Nathan.
I'm not trying to reverse jinx anything, but if this happens, if that happens, like if Gabriel Jesus stops it, Gabriel Jesus won't even play every game for Manchester City. So I don't even see what sort of a relevant point that is.
I mean, I'm just glad that we're disproving the theory of our guys arguing in public. Isn't it true though, like Jer's point about them blitzing everybody? Isn't it just the case? Don't you have to look at the results of these teams against each other? They're by and large going to pick up roughly the same points against the also Rams.
I think the opposite.
The edge here.
I think it's the opposite. I think what we've seen so far this season is that the games between the top 3 will probably be incredibly tight and may end up sort of evening out over the course of the season. That it is those games against what is a incredibly talented Premier League that, a Burnley, Manchester City go and beat them 2-0. It's a completely forgettable game. Sometimes for Liverpool, they might beat Burnley 4-5, but sometimes actually that becomes a bit of a struggle and you're relying on a last minute goal or suddenly you've dropped a couple of points. I think it is the games against that sort of middle third that actually will decide it. And I think Manchester City can win those games easier than Liverpool can.
I'm going to go with Liverpool just to jinx from the Liverpool fans. Interact what Nathan is doing here. I think it's incorrigible behaviour, scandalous. Actually, there's a possibility that Salah and Sadio Mane missed 2 games. By the time this goes out, that will be known knowns as opposed to the unknown unknowns that we have at the moment, where we're basically just shiting on here this morning. So Owen looks very bored there.
No, I'm with Nathan, to be honest with you. I tried to disagree with his point. I do disagree with his point about how exciting they are to watch. But I accept that there is...
They're not exciting to watch. There are times...
Let me finish my point. I accept that there is a predictability to how much they put teams to the sword. But if it was your first time watching this team, it would be exciting. I just think that they've done it so much and that they have a clearly defined style of play. And we're also critical of teams who don't have an identity or don't have a philosophy. Manchester City have a very clear philosophy on how to play. It's very effective and it is carried out by players who are exceptionally gifted. And what you have, your overall point, I completely agree with, because I think Manchester City are going to win the Premier League, and I think that they have the capacity now to go on a run like they went on from January last season, because there are other players who will go on an Ilkay Gundogan type run like he went on last year, which kept him through the Kevin De Bruyne absence. Chances are, if Mo Salah wasn't around this season, Bernardo Silva will be player of the season, and he will be their guy this year. And they just got a glittering array of stars. I think Grealish could come to fruition as well in the second half of the season. And Foden's start of the campaign has been outstanding as well. It's just, I think when you take that individual talent, you can't but be excited by watching them. But there is a repetition to how good they are, and that's why they're going to win the Premier League.
I think the opposite. I think with the talent that is there, they could be a hell of a lot better to watch. I think they're playing within themselves. I think they're playing a no-risk brand of football compared to 3-4 years ago, where they were exhilarating, where they were blowing teams away. I think now what they do is they just wear teams down. There's not as much room for individual expression in that Manchester City team as there was 3 or 4 years ago. And maybe it is Pep Guardiola looking at what he has at his disposal. Maybe it is him looking at not having a number 9. Maybe he thinks this is the best way to go about it, winning a title. And every Premier League winner's medal is worth the exact same. But I don't see Foden, De Bruyne, Grealish quite at the level they could be at so far. Maybe that changes in the second half of the season.
Bernardo Silva and Riyad Mahrez are playing the best football of their careers. And the notion that they're not being allowed to express themselves because of when the team had Kun Aguero, they played to try and get Kun chances within the 6-yard box, and they were very, I would have said, predictable. As opposed to now, they're unpredictable. I think beauty is obviously in the eye of the beholder, but I have found watching Man City this season to be joyous.
Nowhere near.
You're going for Liverpool. You're punting for Liverpool here is obviously.
Well, I'm just going for Liverpool to piss Nathan off.
That's fair enough. I mean, that's as reasonable an argument as I think we could possibly have on this segment. But you're discounting the African Cup of Nations point. Salah, Keita, Mane, City obviously will be without Mahrez, and that will be, on your point, a pretty significant blow to them. But your prediction based with or without African Cup of Nations, if they go, and obviously there'll be a doubt about that, you stand over that?
Whoa, my tree is falling apart here. It's obviously it's been up for a month, so it's drooping. A bit like me. I lost your question there, Adrian. I got distracted.
The Africa Cup of Nations, if it goes ahead and if Liverpool lose Salah, Keita, Mane, you're standing over your prediction?
I still think that Liverpool actually play the most explosive football, and they're the best starting 11. And they have in that front three, certainly in Salah, they've got the best player in the league at the moment. And so that's why I think they should win the league.
Okay. So I'm going to weigh in with Manchester City as well, I have to say, and I do think it is in relation to that point about how well they've done, or maybe not, they haven't blitzed necessarily the other teams in the top 3, the other 2 around them, but they have a better record than the other 2, and I think that collectively they'll probably pick up roughly the same points as all the rest. It'll even itself out over the course of the season, and I think City to get it done. Including
Ger's basing his entire analysis on one win against Aston Villa pre-Christmas that Riyad Mahrez played well. And Riyad Mahrez is having the season of his life. He started 4 games all season in the Premier League for Manchester City. The season of his life. Because he played well against Villa doesn't mean he's playing well every single week of the season.
Was the Bernardo Silva goal that night, Nathan, not like one of the most exciting moments of the season?
Yes, it was.
I thought it was real quality, yes, but in terms of exciting, no, I think it's what this team is capable of and should be doing all the time.
I suspect our YouTube commentator,
one of the best goals in the Premier League in years.
Ger's tree is falling apart, much like his argument here in relation to Riyad Mahrez. So we are going to move on, and I do want to remind everybody that you are watching OTB AM. We're brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. And we are in the middle of gazing into our crystal ball for 2022, and we have a great record, of course, across this. Owen will use it to dine out. He'll use it for about 4 weeks to dine out on something or other wild prediction that he's made, and he'll clip it up and shove it down all our throats.
Can I just ask a question, because you've obviously put in a huge amount of Adrian Barry preparation for this. Has Owen Sheehan also put in a huge amount of preparation?
I think that's possible
sitting
by the
on,
sounds of things, yeah.
really depressed, and that's why he was pretty quiet there. Like, I've literally spent 6 hours working on this and all my jokes. So should we have an Owen Sheehan's jokes segment?
Yeah, we could have
to put out all his good stuff in the space of 2 minutes.
I wish I had. I really wish I had. I'm just. I mean, we could just re-record this in a year's time, and we can pretend that this is the 2022 crystal ball where we get all our predictions correct.
We're gonna come with you for the second one here. We're going to move swiftly onto the Champions League. I'm going to go with Liverpool. Just to throw that out there to begin with. Obviously, blitzing it so far, we'll all look like mugs. Obviously, a few weeks' time, there are games to happen between. This being recorded and it going live. There's plenty of cases elsewhere, but I'm going with Liverpool. On, what are you having?
Manchester City. Predict them every single year, get it wrong every single year, and every single year I use the same logic, that it's going to happen eventually, that eventually they won't crumble when they're expected to win. And I accepted in the group stages there was evidence of them crumbling when they're expected to win. The first Paris Saint-Germain game, for example, should Manchester City have won that game? Probably, but they got beaten. Is there a chance that they're going to fall into that exact same trap against a team with a similar quality to Paris Saint-Germain at some point in these knockout stages? Probably, but I'm going to go against the probable outcome here and say that Pep Guardiola will not bottle it in a big game. I'm going to say that he will not bottle his final selection when they get there, that surely, eventually, his constellation of incredible stars will do what they do to the Premier League on the continental level and actually get over the line. I think they came really close last year, and I think it was an individual mess up from Pep in the final with his team selection. And I do think Chelsea deserve a huge amount of credit for how Tuchel had a number on him early in the campaign as well, or early in his tenure as Chelsea boss. So this year I'm expecting ducks in a row, or I'm predicting, ducks in a row, and Manchester City to finally get the job done.
Oh, and there is a big case for Chelsea on, or no?
Of course there is. I predicted Chelsea to win the Premier League at the start of the year, and as you've heard, I've already done a U-turn on that, so I'm not subscribing to Chelsea's prospects in the second half of the season to win either trophy. I would actually be more confident predicting Liverpool for the Premier League. When it comes to the Champions League, I'm not sure who I expect to win more. Of course, Liverpool have the Anfield factor and the fact that, that this sort of argument that sometimes gets put out there. On any given night, Liverpool can beat you. So I'm not sure when it comes to the Champions League, but for the Premier League, I'd have Liverpool ahead of Chelsea. So I've done a U-turn on Chelsea's prospects completely.
Jared, does your confidence in Liverpool extend to Europe?
Well, you've gone for Liverpool, have you?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So we've got Liverpool and Man City. Liverpool, as we were recording this, are like third favourites. Bayern Munich are second favourites. I actually think, honestly, I really believe that Real Madrid have an outside chance of being dark horses. They would qualify as dark horses. They're the biggest 16-1 when we're recording this. And if I was being brave, I would predict Real Madrid, but I'm not. I'm just going to pick Bayern Munich. It'll be boring.
Yeah, devastating in a poor group. Is that fair enough?
I just think that they have a group of players, self-confidence. They've got this chip on their shoulder because the Ballon d'Or went against them. They think, I saw Thomas Müller say that they were going to try and win the Champions League now for Lewandowski. If Lewandowski stays fit and plays beyond the quarterfinals, then I think that they've a chance of winning every single game they play at this point. Like, you can throw a blanket over those top 6 teams, really, the top 5 teams, and say any one of those should win this year. But that, obviously, as we know, doesn't happen. So City should win it. Liverpool could win it. Bayern Munich have a really good chance of winning it. And Paris Saint-Germain or Chelsea, either of those just got a little bit of form. And we saw Mbappe recover from his blip. And we saw Messi start to pick up some form too. So you can make a case for all of them. It's essentially sticking a pin in the top 5. Mine has landed on Bayern.
Okay, there'll do it for Angela. Nathan, what are you thinking?
I can't see Pep making the same mistake as last season and going into a huge game without a Rodri or a Fernandinho. Rodri's probably at a level now where he's got to be picked, and I think it'd make City favourites. I will go with Liverpool. Having not gone with them for the Premier League, I think full houses back at Anfield will make a huge difference for those big European nights in the knockout stages as they head towards the final. But again, I think it probably shows the quality of those top 3 in the Premier League. It's hard to look past them. Bayern Munich at times have looked a bit loose defensively. I just can't wait for it. The last age, the quarterfinals, knockout stage of the Champions League is as good as sport gets and has been over the last few years. So, trying to predict who's going to win between Bayern Munich and Chelsea if they meet in the quarterfinal, or Bayern Munich and Liverpool, they just seem incredibly tight games. But Liverpool have a knack of winning these sort of matches over the course of 2 legs. So, while I'm going for City for the league, I'll go for Liverpool just about for this. Is there a possibility that Paris Saint-Germain, have some state-of-the-art strength and conditioning coaches who are revolutionising the game, and they're just taking handy in the first half of the season, and they're going to come out like Lionel Messi is walking around against Manchester City because he knows he's going to be running around when it comes to the Champions League quarter-final. It's
conserving his energy for 4 months' time. It's would be certainly a new development in S&C. Isn't some of this as well, depending on what happens next month, in the sense that, Erling Haaland particularly, some of those teams that we've talked about, suddenly if he ends up at Manchester City, or I don't know, he's looking around him at the minute and wondering what sort of rabble he's involved with, killed by Ajax, losing to Sporting, and thinking that he's too good to be an all-rounder. He's been linked with Madrid. That changes the conversation if he moves in January, right, to one of those teams that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I think wherever Haaland ends up, whether it's in January next summer, you're all automatically looking at the team as the favourite for whatever competitions they're in. He's that good. It does seem unlikely that he's going to leave in January. So I wouldn't get too excited about that. But there is the possibility that Manchester City do sign somebody in January. Like, do they go back in for a Harry Kane at a much reduced fee, considering he can't score a goal at the moment? Like, even that, I think, would be transformative for Manchester City. So Harry Kane probably just got a hat-trick there 2 days ago. Maybe he is finished. But they're, and are Liverpool planning for the departure of Salah and Mane and thinking, we have somebody lined up who actually can come in and fill a hole and get us through till the end of the season, and as a young player who can help progress over the next few years. So those things can change it. But I think right now, I think you can tell from the conversation about both the Premier League and the Champions League that these three teams are sort of inseparable. And how good would it be if somehow we get to March, April, and the three of them are still right there?
Yeah, I do think there's a Chelsea team that beat Juve 4-0 turn up every week, and they're going to win. They're going to make a mockery of our entire predictions so far, because they haven't featured at all in any of our predictions for Premier League or Champions League this season. So that's 2 votes for Liverpool, on with Manchester City, and the European goes for Bayern Munich, and we'll see how that one pans out. That's Champions League done. On to the World Cup champions, and just to give people a sense of how this is stacking up, Ger mentioned the odds, but earlier on, it's Brazil, France, Spain, Germany, England in that order as favourites. I'll kick it off here and say, I mean, I don't know what our predictions are. I know mine, and I'm not going for England, and I wonder if we don't give them enough credit on the basis of recent form at big tournaments, Ger.
We don't give England enough credit.
Yeah. Semi-finalists in 2018, finalists of Euro 2020. Am I right to say that nobody in this group is going for England to win the World Cup?
They were definitely on my final shortlist.
It's very far away, right? This is kind of ridiculous because we're so far away, and also it's before the final round of playoffs. We don't know whether or not Portugal or Italy are going to be there when we're talking about this, right? But if England were to arrive with Harry Kane in form and Raheem Sterling in form and Phil Foden in form, and Mason Mount in form, it's very difficult to say that they don't have enough ammunition to actually win the tournament. There's a few doubts about their defence, and I'm not quite sure he understands exactly how his midfield is supposed to function. But it's international football. Like, nobody has a brilliant team with an automatic system and identity that they can fully cling to. Like, Italy came not from nowhere, but hadn't qualified for the last World Cup and then won the Euros. Is there a good chance that somebody falls into a bit of form and wins this tournament? There is, and that's why I definitely would not rule England out.
Can I just on that? Like, I think you make a good point, but the real question mark I would have is not so much the sort of historic element of them not having won in a long time, because I do think that the current players are totally different. It's the Gareth Southgate factor, and while he's an unbelievably likeable man and has done a good job, are you putting him into the same category as Luis Enrique, as Cheech, as Hansi Flick, as, if Italy make it, Roberto Mancini? I'm not sure you are. I'm not sure you are backing Gareth Southgate against any of those managers. It's an unbelievably open World Cup, and it's going to be one that's possibly there for the taking when we look back in the story of 2022 as an unexpected winner potentially coming through. But I do think you compare Southgate to the other managers that are involved in those top of the odds teams that you mentioned there, Adrian, and I think it's hard to make a case that he's better than any of them.
He could be a better man manager, right? Like, tactically, it really is your point. But I think the evidence of what he's achieved so far is his capacity to get the best out of, you couldn't say average players, but certainly in a lot of cases not world class. And possibly the biggest thing that's going against him now is the likes of Maguire, Rashford, Pickford, Kane has been mentioned. Like, not the players that they were. And like, look at Jermak's a very fair point. A lot of this is null and void. It's like 10 or 11 months away, but let that not stop us. And maybe there are some players coming through.
Well, look at Jude Bellingham coming through.
Yeah.
The Jude Bellingham in a year's time could be transformative.
They should be in that conversation.
Yeah. Declan Rice becoming world class.
Well, if you have a midfield of Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham and Mason Mount playing just in front of them, then you have a midfield that can go and win a World Cup. And they've already got very close to 2 major tournaments, while not being quite sure what they're about. And I'm sort of split on Southgate as well, in that the big question marks about England are the goalkeeper and the defence. And he's sort of countered that by being very defensive, by putting in extra defenders, whereas that meant that they couldn't get all their attacking players on the teams. But maybe Rice getting to another level and Bellingham getting to another level means he can just go with a flat back four, that maybe he can play Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back, knowing that Declan Rice will cover him in the way that Fabinho does for Liverpool. And then you're trusting and hoping that 2 or 3 of Sterling, Kane, Rashford, Sancho, Foden, Grealish, Saka are coming into form at just the right time. So there's no question that they have the talent to do it. It's just very difficult always to predict that England will win. And I'd agree with Owen, maybe he's not the best manager. I think he has a definite emotional intelligence that has that connection with the players, seems to be able to keep them at quite a level head. There's no great controversy around the squad. And I'd be very surprised if England didn't get to the semi-finals at the very least and go very close, because at international football, look at Brazil, who are the favourites. There's some glaring issues in that Brazilian side, whether it's Thiago Silva, who'll be maybe 38, 39 in a year's time, playing at centre back, whether it's Fabinho, probably been the only standout midfielder they really have. Argentina don't have any great midfielders in there as well. Well, you're looking at that Brazilian midfield of maybe Casemiro goes in there as well alongside him. But I think every international team has weaknesses, and England probably have fewer of them than pretty much everybody.
Can I just on the Bellingham point? It's really interesting one. Like, I'm picking Spain to win the World Cup next year. I'm not overly confident in that suggestion, and the reason why I'm lacking confidence is actually the Spanish Bellinghams, if you want to refer to it as that. Like, are the likes of Pedri and Gavi actually going to be mature enough to lead a World Cup winning team? And I'd have that same concern over Bellingham in a year's time. Like, it's a while away, but it's going to be over in a year's time. Bellingham will be 19. Like, is 19-year-old Jude Bellingham going to be the centre of a World Cup winning team? And I accept there's a hypocrisy there, because I picked Spain to win the World Cup and they've got teenagers who are at the very spine of their team, and I'm hopeful that maybe they will be able to see it through. But I think that actually those sort of wily old dogs that you mentioned, the Brazilian team, actually could come and lift a trophy at the end of this all, and that would be the reason why they've done it. So that'd be my concern over my Spanish pick, and that would be my concern allied with Gareth Southgate over anybody who's picking England.
Yeah, third favourites at 8-1. What do you think? We didn't get a prediction from you.
That's a good question, Adrian. I don't know.
Brazil 11-2.
I'll give you mine.
France,
I'll give you my
5 or
prediction.
6-1. Spain 8-1. Germany 10-1, and England 7-1, and then whatever you're having yourself after that.
I'm a dreamer, Adrian. I'm a dreamer, so I'm going for Argentina. Messi, that one last hurrah. Of course, the great Emi Martinez in goal for Argentina. So quality from back to front. If Christian Romero can come and develop the way people think he can over the next year, maybe they've got a centre half who can keep them quite solid. And I think everybody would love to just see Messi get that World Cup. So again, because we're a year away, there's so many imponderables that can happen, and you can pick holes in every team. I'm just going to go with the dream scenario of a Messi. We have to remember as well, it is.
Well, he's resting himself, Nathan. He's resting himself.
Well, he is. He's walking around walking around matches now to save himself for a year's time. But on that, like, this will be obviously a very different World Cup for any number of reasons. But look at where we are right now with the amount of injuries in the Premier League. Every single team seems to be missing 4 or 5 players, and every week there's a couple more muscle injuries because the amount of matches that they're playing. The Premier League season finishes a week before the World Cup starts. So there will be players who will be playing on the Premier League one Saturday and playing in the World Cup the following Saturday. So we're going to be going into this with a lot of injuries, players carrying knocks. There's not that usual sort of 3-4 week lead in time where there's the race against time to get somebody fit. Managers are going to have to make decisions about squads. And if you pick up an injury at the wrong time, you're probably going to end up missing the World Cup. So I think that's going to be a massive factor as well. And having that bit of depth. And again, when you look at England, I think actually, like, when I went through that sort of 6-7 attacking players, like, they're going to be leaving 3 real quality players. Like, it's really hard to see Grealish and Foden both starting for England. But if one of them is injured, the other one can step in. And is there a massive dip? I don't think so. So the more I talk, the more I'm coming around to England. But I'll stick with my dream scenario for Argentina.
I had a leaning to Brazil, I have to say, and like they're 11-2 favourites, so sure, why wouldn't you have? And they've qualified with 6 games to spare, so sure, why wouldn't you have? But I don't know, I just think there's a huge reliance on Neymar. He's already been talking about being not necessarily in the frame of mind to be thinking about where he goes beyond that World Cup. Like, the strain of football might be too much for him after that, which is a slight concern when you're headed into the biggest spotlight in world football later in the year. they haven't achieved massively with Neymar there either. I think they've the Olympics and the Confederations Cup 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm not going for them, but I am going for Germany, and I think they're coming good under Flick. Okay. But as you say, Ger, a lot unknown about a tournament a year ago. Nail your colours to the mast, but you haven't.
I was glad you talked yourself out of Brazil there, because I'm going to go with them, because I think Vinicius Junior and I think Ederson back to front are going to have key roles to play, and that's why I'm back in Brazil.
Okay.
Will the heat be an issue?
Go again?
Will the heat be an issue?
Well, they have air-conditioned stadiums, Ger.
I mean, little fake clouds floating over and dropping rain down. That's not happening, is it?
I'm just Googling weather forecast Qatar now. 28 degrees Celsius.
It's fine, isn't it? That's not that big a deal.
That's totally manageable. It's good reason to back Brazil.
Right, we've all gone for somebody different. Owen Spain, Ger Brazil, Nathan Argentina, and myself for Germany there. We're going to move on, and a reminder that you're watching the 2020 Crystal Ball segment here on OTB AM, brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. And by the way, there's nothing we would love more over the Christmas weeks, New Year weeks. If you were to just get involved with us, slide into our DMs, give us all the abuse that's going, and we'd love nothing more as we spend time with our families to drop us some of that feedback. We're going to move on to the Ireland.
Roy in the DMs, please.
Well, I haven't seen the latest episode, so keep it on the down low. All Ireland champions in football. The
season's over, though, Adrian. It's all finished. It is.
No, I appreciate your point. It's what an ending. Woof. Who could have thought it? We're talking about Tyrone, Kerry, Dublin, and the All-Sorans. Owen, I'm over to you first.
The slide on Mayo there. Looking forward to Nathan's response to that. Dublin are going to win the All-Ireland next year. With every great dynasty comes a sting in the tail. Go back to Kerry in the 80s, Kilkenny in the noughties / start of the 2010s. When their run comes to an end, they invariably come back after a year or two and win an All-Ireland. This Dublin team will win another All-Ireland. It's just a matter of when. And I think the when will be 2022. They have enough learned experience in that group and enough of a reason next year to say screw you to everybody who doubted us. We're going to get over the line. And then maybe this whole notion of, they've had enough, their bellies are full, their appetites have been sated. I think that only is a reality after they proved everyone wrong again. I think there is enough of a reason for them to be angry in 2022, and I think that anger will take them over the line. And of course, they're an unbelievable team. They have it was a bizarre situation that they weren't in the All-Ireland final this year. Let's face it. I mean, that Mayo game was a bizarre game. It was an absolutely incredible,
in what way,
crumbling from Dublin. An incredible crumbling.
An enforced
from Dublin.
crumbling.
Sure, a forced crumbling, of course. And Mayo tried to force them to crumble many a time before, and it didn't work. But for whatever reason, it worked on that occasion. So there was something that went badly wrong for Dublin that night. In that second half, it was an astonishing collapse from Dublin. And I think that's an aberration.
Do you not think, on that basis, that's actually a reason to think that Dublin won't win it next year, that there is suddenly a chink of light for the others, that the absence of Cluxton, some of the players that retired over the last few years, that's actually a bigger reason to suggest Dublin won't win it next year?
I think it gives you a better reason to be excited for the championship next year, for sure. I think it gives definitely other teams hope, but I think if I'm going to predict one team to actually come out on top at the end of it, it's still going to be Dublin. That hope will actually end in a story that we've been pretty familiar with over the last 7 years.
Are you taking issue with the Mayo being All-Sorans, Nathan? Have you got them in the mix?
I think you have to have Mayo in the mix. I'm sure Owen is being facetious there. Mayo couldn't be seen as All-Sorans, considering they've got to back-to-back All-Ireland finals, while perhaps in a period of transition. And I think I would agree with Owen's opinion from a few weeks ago that Mayo will possibly end up in an All-Ireland final again and maybe find a way to lose it again. But I think Mayo are definitely in the top 3-4 teams in the country. Tyrone, Kerry,
if there's
Dublin, Mayo.
Top three, who are they ahead of?
No, I think Mayo are on a par with Tyrone, and probably just behind Kerry, and just behind Kerry, and I would have Dublin well out in front.
They're not the same. This is not the same thing.
Sure, what's happening here is
that you guys have that there's some kind of weird thing happened in Knock, and it poisoned you all. And as a result, you all have this delirium that you just buy into. It's like, oh, we're the same as that team. And then that team beats you. Like, oh, we're the same as that team. It's like, no.
Well, Mayo beat Dublin last year. Are you saying that Mayo were better than Dublin? There was no trophy handed out. So what? There's only one trophy handed out at the end of every year.
At the end of the All-Ireland final, there was a trophy handed out.
But I'm saying, I understand, Jer. I was there. I saw it happen. But I'm saying that Mayo beat Dublin. We're not suggesting Mayo are better than Dublin.
But Tyrone are definitely a better team than Mayo. They undressed them. They were far superior to them. And they're going to have the confidence now, the swagger that comes from being All-Ireland champion. And Mayo, all due respect, have lost their best player. Like, Oisin Mullen not being around next year is...
We don't know if Oisin Mullen's
just
going to
got
be
back
around next year.
They just got their best player back, Ger. They got Cillian O'Connor back.
It's beginning to make me believe that there is genuinely something cursed in the air or in the water in Mayo.
No, as Old said, Cillian O'Connor is going to return. Oisin Mullen ain't gone anywhere just yet, so it could have worked out just fine for Mayo.
But you're sorry. The biggest takeaway from the segment is going to be that you're saying Mayo are. Let's be kind to your point that they're on a par with Tyrone.
Absolutely. Well, I think Tyrone are a far better team on the day and deserve to win the match. But I think Mayo at their best, Mayo didn't play well.
So the two teams turned up today, but there wasn't even a case, Nathan, right afterwards that if ands and buts of stuff that happened, it was a pretty...
Well, if he scores the penalty, that's a pretty big if.
And look, possibly, but even at that, it felt like a very cut and dried result. I did feel that was a big part of the disappointment with Mayo fans afterwards, that there wasn't a sense of, actually, if a couple of little bits, the grains of rice had gone our way, it was a good old bag of rice that went against them, I felt. And now they're losing Oisin Mullen. He's gone. Fair enough, Cillian.
We don't know. We don't know if that's happening.
But like, and that's to suggest that Tyrone are just going to stay on the level they're at. And actually, like that Tyrone young team now know how to win a final. Like, there's every reason to suggest I'm all in on Tyrone. By the way,
what
I feel as if the two lads, Ger, are very much yarring us out the gap here with their plays of Dublin.
No, Dublin are going to win this All Ireland. I think Paul Mannion is going to come back. I think Dublin haven't really lost anybody. Kevin McMenamin wasn't involved last year anyways, and they will have an almighty chip on their shoulder, a huge amount to prove, and I think they're just going to be relentless throughout the season. They're still, by far and away, the most talented bunch of players in the country, and I think they're going to win this All Ireland. I think they'll probably win 4 of the next 5.
They're not the most talented starting 15 anymore. Kerry and Tyrone, we completely undervalue Tyrone's All-Ireland win. After the All-Ireland final, loads of people were saying to me, geez,
what were they saying?
You broke up there, Jared.
Yeah.
What were these people saying?
Have you midfielders, like this perfectly weirdly symmetrical midfield partnership that can do everything that they need to do, the leadership, the drive, everything that you need to make a great team. I think they could be on the verge of being almost as good as the original Tyrone great team, the team of the noughties. But I also think that this Kerry team, now that they have a different management system and somebody's going to come in and who isn't tied to the emotion of having come through with that group of players, cold, analytical, that this Kerry team are actually ready to be more savage than they've been and more ruthless than they've been, because that's the style of management that we would expect from Jack O'Connor. I think it's all set up for Kerry this year. And to be honest, I don't think they're going to just bounce back.
They've no defence. Kerry haven't had a defence. Kerry haven't had a defence for a number. Have anybody coming through? I listened to Pat Spillane a few weeks ago after the Kerry final.
They've got a new full back.
It'll be the exact same group of players.
They're going to have a new full back. The guy who captained Stacks to their county title is only 21. He's absolutely sensational. The defence will be better, and Paddy Talley's going to be working with them next year, and that will be the thing that I expect them to be better at. But I still don't know about the mental aspect.
One point about the ifs, ands, or buts. Mayo have none apart from perhaps the missed penalty, but we know that Kerry got beaten after their best player got injured. They couldn't score again after that. They made him play through injury because he was so important.
Mayo's best player missed the entire season.
He was still able to do it. Mayo's most successful scorer. I don't know if Cillian is actually their best player anymore. I think that we'll see, Nathan. We'll see. You obviously have this endless reservoir of misplaced confidence, and it's very endearing, and it makes for great theatre in the grounds, but you're cursed.
I hope I'm wrong, but I feel we could be at a point where the end of Mayo is nigh, and we're not talking about them as being in the conversation for the top 5 anymore.
What are we transitioning to? Are we sure we're in transition? Are we not sure that might have been the peak of that team?
I do want to bring Owen in on a point that's been made here about the potential, Gerard's point about the potential dominance of this Tyrone team of Gaelic football for the next 5, 6, 7 years.
He didn't say that though. He said that this Tyrone team could go. Just
don't worry about what he actually said. Just roll with that.
They could be close to the Tyrone team of the noughties who didn't even dominate their decade.
You would have to say that qualifies as a team who are going to be, if you want to give it full qualification, thereabouts for the next 6-7 years.
This Tyrone team is an outstanding team. They're not as good as a team of the noughties who didn't even dominate their own generation. So no, this Tyrone team is not going to dominate for the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Best team of the noughties, weren't they?
The second best team of the noughties. Good team, not a great team. Good team of winners. There's every chance that they will win another All Ireland. I do think that there is a big problem though, and it's like it comes back to what we were talking about at the top here about Dublin. I think that next year, you'd love to see Dublin and Tyrone going toe-to-toe in a semi-final or a final next year. I think that would be a really, really good test for this Tyrone team. And if Tyrone get over that, then of course the conversation's different, Adrian. Of course it becomes, what can they actually do over the next little while? What I think this is that we've seen so many great teams come and go without winning an All-Ireland medal. Tyrone have got into the conversation of not being one of those teams. They finally got their medal. They deserve it. It's like Galway in 2001. It's like Cork in 2010, like a really good team that could so easily have missed out on winning an All-Ireland because of their peers. Exactly. Well, I suppose, Galway did already have 98, but a team that could have missed out because of their peers, like Cork missing out because of those Kerry and Tyrone teams. This Tyrone team could have missed out because of that Dublin team, because they went out without a fight in 2018 in that final. So the stage that they're at currently is they've finally not been one of those teams. But that's as much as you can say right now. As much as I completely appreciate what they did this year, I think we've got to wait until next year before we start making grand statements about how all-time great the Tyrone team is.
That's why we're here, Owen. That's literally why we're here.
No,
Jared, in a word, what's your prediction?
Kerry.
So we've 2 votes for Dublin, Owen and Nathan. I'm going for Tyrone. Jared's all in and Kerry. I think we can all agree that it'll be, hopefully all squads can avoid the COVID situation, the COVID curse that were visited upon Tyrone obviously last year. Interesting to see if it does crop up exactly what will happen. That's the football, and some diverse opinion across the board there again. We need to crack things on here, lads. About 10 minutes left for our last few categories. I have a feeling that we could all just answer the next category in one word. The All-Ireland hurling champions. Jared.
Limerick.
Owen's gone for Limerick.
Yeah.
Limerick across the board.
I can't wait to see Henry Shefflin and see what they do. But no, Limerick.
Nathan?
Limerick. Let's keep it simple.
We leave it there. I don't think we've anybody. You can make cases, you can sort of talk a team up, but I think ultimately for making predictions, let's just leave it all at Limerick and move on to the Six Nations Championship for next year. It's going to be a really competitive tournament, I think, on the basis of what we've seen over the course of autumn. France, Ireland, England, in that order is my prediction here. The betting has it France, England, Ireland. I think that certainly when you look at the fixtures,
Wales not winning last year.
They did? Didn't they? No, sorry. It was that the Scotland-Wales game was at the end, Wales
Wales won it last year. Wales won it.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, this is where Ger tends to predict Wales, and then a couple of months later go 2-footed in on Wales and slag off the entire fan group. So it's a nice kind of like Christmas bit of generosity from Ger to predict Wales at this point. Which I presume he's not going to do because France are going to win this thing, aren't they? Like Adrian's going for them. I'd actually completely agree with Adrian's order on this, that it's going to be France, Ireland, England. Now, if we're talking about a 2023 Six Nations, I would have England ahead of Ireland. I don't necessarily think Ireland are 100% a better team than England. I just think in a year that's a year before World Cup year, Ireland will have a good chance of finishing ahead of England. But this France team is just too goddamn good to be beaten next year, I suspect.
This is the year we would win it.
Yes, but I just think France are too good to allow that to happen. I think regardless of people being in the mode for a World Cup or not, which France obviously will be, I think that I think this France team is better than potentially than a lot of teams that we've seen in the Six Nations over the last little while. So for me, it's going to be France.
Will they do a Grand Slam?
Yes. Let's go all out. I mean, off the top of my head, yes, they will do a Grand Slam. Why not?
Good question. Yeah.
This is the one we won, isn't it? This is the one we win, isn't it? 2014, 2018, 2022.
Yeah,
I don't think we win this.
No, go on.
Jared, go for it.
Well, I don't think we're going to win either. I think France are the best team in it, but I think it's actually set up to be one of the great sports tournaments of our lifetime. where England are now. The one caveat to this might be that England, Eddie Jones has no interest in winning this. Like if you were to say on the list of priorities, you've got to find a tight head prop, and you've got to find a back row forward, and you've got to find a winger, or you've got to win the Six Nations. He's like, I need those three players to try and win me the World Cup. So that might be the one bit. But I think France will want to get into a winning habit at this point, and the talent they have is too great. Ireland, likewise, want to establish that winning habit. Wales are still very good in these tournaments. Unfortunately, their strength in depth has re-emerged, and we all gave them the confidence. Scotland are, Finn Russell is back and playing good, and they beat England last year, and they have a bit of confidence going into this year. Like it's genuinely set out to be one of the great sports tournaments over the next couple of years, and I think France are going to win it.
When do people think was the last time France won the Six Nations? Because I had it in my head that like a couple of years ago when they beat Ireland convincingly that they actually won it, and they didn't. England won it that year. It's going to be 12 years if they win it next year since they last won it. They haven't won the Six Nations since 2010. So it's been a long old drought for France. So there is that added element of motivation, I guess, that it's Six Nations 2022, do it again in 23 and then win your home World Cup. It just seems it's all set up nicely for them to be pretty dominant. But there's obviously a reason why they haven't won it in 12 years. They have had outrageously talented players over those 12 years. And the question is, will the old French failings come to bite them again over the next little while? It does seem that they're pretty well coached and they're very well set up, and that they have learned a lot from all that failure over the last dozen years. But you can't write off the possibility that they will bottle it in some capacity. Now, if Ireland win a Six Nations next year, it will probably be the greatest sense of national paranoia ever bestowed upon the country. If the All Blacks win didn't bestow enough paranoia, exactly.
This is the Kerry mentality.
If we didn't get paranoid enough after the All Blacks result, then winning a Six Nations next year will certainly push us into that frenzy zone.
You do have to think that from an Irish point of view, it's the collision. It's at the minute a collision of great timing of player profiles for this Ireland team, of the maturation of a bunch of players that have shown so much promise that are beginning to fulfil it now, with some of the older stagers like Sexton and Furlong. But and there's loads of reasons. It's a tight call for me, I have to say, but I'm just about going for France. Nathan, you're the only one outstanding on this one. What are you having?
I'm kind of with Jared. I'm very excited about this because you're looking at France and thinking, like, in a way, you want to end the Six Nations with Ntamack and Dupont as the two outstanding players, because it means France are going to have played some sensational rugby. And while I'm probably basing an awful lot of what I know and think about France on that All Blacks game, I am going to go for France as well. I think Ireland starting at home against Wales and then going to France, like, this Six Nations could turn very quickly, because, if Wales, as we know, have a habit of just turning up and doing their thing and winning games we don't give them any chance in. If Ireland were to suddenly start slowly, then you're going to France, it can fall apart quite quickly. You say Eddie Jones, does he care about this? But England were a shit show in last year's Six Nations. They lost to Ireland, Scotland, Wales. Surely they need some sort of performance here. Surely they can't go through something similar again where they're preparing for next year and have to turn up and get results. And as Jared said, Scotland are getting better. Wales always seem to perform. I just wonder, is it going to be as straightforward as we think for Ireland to come maybe second in this tournament? So I'm going to go France, England, Ireland.
I couldn't disagree with that any more strongly, but we've got to move on to the next item. It's France across the board there, by the way. It's the first time we've had a bit of proper collegiality in our ball gazing for 2022, and Limerick, I should say. That was the briefest discussion of all time. Nathan, over to you. Will there be an Irish major winner in golf next year?
There won't. Sorry, I'm just panicking. The bin man is outside, and I have not put the bin out. It's at the front door.
Do you need to go and get your green bin out?
I have to get the green bin out. I got to get the green bin out.
We'll take over the golf chat from here, Nathan. Don't you worry.
I'm just avoiding answering the question.
The golf chat comes up, and he's like, "Oh crap! I've prepared a chat for this. Let's make up a story about the bin."
But we can guess what Nathan is going to say here. He's going to say no, isn't he?
It has to be no. The odds are too great.
I'm going with no anyway. Yeah.
Is there going to be some sort of romantic Golf Weekly sort of Rory shout for next year? Is Nathan going to say that the shirt being ripped was actually the first image you're going to see in the emotional montage at the end of the week in Augusta in April? That actually this is how the Rory story starts? That all the controversy but all the ups and downs over the last couple of years, the tee shot off the first in Portrush, this will all be part of the narrative when he's slipping on that green jacket on the Sunday. Anyway, go ahead, Nathan.
How come the bins get the bin man is still coming around and Christmas week is incredible.
What do you reckon, Nathan? What's going to happen?
Bin men are very committed, aren't they?
What's
the problem with working from home?
An Irish major winner, yes or no?
No, I don't think so. There's obviously enough players there that some of them can get into contention. I don't see McIlroy having the form. I don't see him being in a strong enough position in terms of his game. I think we're going to have the same scenario where there'll be moments during the season where he'll turn it on, we'll get our hopes up, but I just can't see him rocking up to Augusta and winning a Masters, getting that career Grand Slam. Shane Lowry, again, like his putting lets him down a lot, but has a habit of just rocking up and winning a tournament. But I don't think you can sit at the start of the year and predict that Shane's going to win a major. And then Leona Maguire would be the other one that's had an unbelievable, but still technically her rookie season. I think her priority is just to get a win, any sort of a win on the LPGA Tour. And I still think it's probably a bit of a stretch for Leona to go and win a major. So if you're asking me straight up, will it be an Irish winner? I would say no, but obviously there's the talent there to go and win one. But I think the men's game is just so stacked right now that you could have half a dozen players who are in the mix and probably half a dozen who are ahead of McIlroy right now.
Jared?
Yeah, I think Leona Maguire is going to win one before Rory McIlroy. That's my prediction. I don't know when that's going to be, but I think she's more likely to win one than he is at the moment.
Which isn't the question. Is that a no?
Yeah, the only one to break it. Yeah, it is a no. I said no at the start, and no, we're not going to do it. But if there is going to be one, it'll be Leona.
But the Open this year, it's the 150th Open, and it's at St Andrews. And if it's flat cam at St Andrews, it changes the dynamic of the tournament completely. Like a Padraig Harrington could go and do something, and it could be right down McIlroy's alley. But I just think you look at what you're thinking. John Rahm is probably going to win one this year. Colin Morikawa should win one this year. Justin Thomas hasn't won one in a few years. Jordan Spieth hasn't won one in a few years. Brooks Koepka, DeChambeau, Dustin Johnson. They're all there. That's just the Americans. And look at the other players that were coming through in that American team. Victor Hovland. Like, I think the days of McIlroy, even that day of if McIlroy's at his best, nobody can compete. I think that's gone. I think actually all these guys on their day can more than compete with McIlroy. And you just want him to stay out of the spotlight for a little while, go play his game, nothing too dramatic, stay in a level, but there just seems to be one thing after another at the moment. And
don't stay out of the spotlight.
No, I don't. Sorry. In terms of his golf game, might be the best thing. In terms of Golf Weekly, subscribe now. In terms of Golf Weekly, is the worst thing that could possibly ever happen.
Okay, that's 4 no's across the board. And we've just 2 categories left. You're watching OTB AM or Crystal Ball Gazing for 2022. It's brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with the new and improved razors. And our next question is to whether the Republic of Ireland are going to qualify for the World Cup or not. Vera Pauw's Republic of Ireland. And I'm going to go straight in with yes, and that's going to come via the playoffs. I think that I actually think that the Sweden game away is the next game in April, and it's a while away. And I think it's actually bad timing in so many ways. The momentum off the back of the Georgia match, the change in approach from an Irish point of view in that it was very attack-minded. Obviously, they scored a record number of goals. The gap has come at a bad time. The next opposition has come at a bad time. But I think we'll do enough against Georgia and Finland and Tala, and should deliver enough at Slovakia away, I think, to qualify via playoffs. So I'm going with yes. Nathan?
I'm going to go with yes. I think actually Sweden is fine, because what we expect will happen is Ireland will lose to Sweden and they will beat Georgia away, which means it'll all come down to the final week. And how nervy a week is that going to be at home against Finland? If you win that, if you draw that, you're going to Slovakia in the last game. We saw how difficult Slovakia were. That it's going to be so tough still. But I think at home against Finland, hopefully everything is right in the world and there's a packed house and they've already gone there and won. I think they'll have enough. It's just then they go into a really convoluted playoff system, where you may end up having to play 3 matches to qualify, depending on your ranking and your seedings. So I just feel there's something there. There feels like there's a bit of magic around this team at the moment, that they have enough about them to qualify. So I'm going to say yes, but it's not going to be in any way straightforward.
I think you can only really make a prediction at this point as to whether or not they're going to make the playoffs. And I think the answer to that question is yes. So I guess we're shooting in the dark a little bit until you would see the playoff draw.
I look forward to the playoff draw and Owen and Kevin Kilbane coming together to explain the playoff draw.
I hope that happens.
Nations League style.
And I predict that is going to happen. I predict we will have a morning where there will be a playoff format to describe, because I do think Ireland are going to finish ahead of Finland, and I do think that the comparative results even against the poor Georgians probably paint Ireland in a really good light and show the potential that they have here and the trajectory that they're on. So if we're going to make a stab in the dark here at the playoff, maybe they could take out a bigger team if they do get an unfortunate draw. So yes is the very optimistic answer at the end of 2021.
Sure. Well, 3 yeses there. I'm going to go with no.
Go on.
Why?
Well, there's just enough mood music around the team that suggests that everything isn't as rosy as it's being made out. And I think that we haven't quite evolved to the point where we can be confident in our abilities, where the 2 games taken as a collective, there wasn't enough consistency in the 2 games. Now, the highs are very high, but the lows are still not able to win matches you're supposed to win. And until that goes, I think you can't enthusiastically predict that we're going to qualify out of a group. So I'm saying we're still just a little bit short.
Yeah, well, I think it does. Like the 2 key players, it very much depends on them being in form. Like we saw with Denise Sullivan in a couple of the games where maybe she wasn't fully where she's at. We can see when she's firing on all cylinders the impact that she has on the team, and when she's slightly off it, how that can go the other way as well. So I do think there's an element of that. But I do think that the playoffs are clearly in sight.
I think, and to go back to what Jer's saying, I think the question when it comes to Katie McCabe and Denise Sullivan is are they slightly off? Are they not being enabled by the system and the setup to actually perform to their very best? And are Ireland setting up in a way that gets them involved all the time? If they can figure out a way of doing that, and I've said many times, I don't think Vera Pauw is going to change the way she goes about things, and I've no doubt if they don't qualify that will be the end for Vera Pauw, and Ireland will go down a very different route. And it is good. Like it is going to be incredibly nervy. You do not want Ireland in a position where they have to go and win in Slovakia on that final game. Like that is the nightmare scenario, I think, because that is going to be an almighty task for them. But I still think there's enough there with that win over in Finland to get them through to a playoff. It's quite literally a bit of a lottery then. But I think that providing they avoid the very big guns, they should just about have enough to qualify.
Yeah, and they kind of have to do it, don't they, on the basis of what happened in the previous campaign as well. It feels like sort of now or never for that generation of players. Lads, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been sort of certainly a lot of wild predictions and plenty of pontificating and wild and unprovable and untraceable hot takes. That was what we set out to do at the start, and I think we've ticked that box. So thanks a million. Enjoyable as always. We will never speak of this again unless Owen, of course, manages to get one of his wild predictions corrected and it'll be cut up, and we'll hear about it endlessly in the middle of the year. Nathan, you look
can we get Owen's outro as well?
Happy Christmas, one and all.
There,
I hope you've had a great Christmas
and a happy New Year.
And a happy New Year as well. Have a warm wishes to you and your family for 2022. Signing off from OTB AM for another successful year. Goodbye.
I like the bell. Over and out.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.